Don't let go of your cookies. Hi, welcome back. People are gravitating towards tragic news, or at least negative news in general. From my perspective, what I've noticed is that plenty of people have been putting more of their attention on the negative news that goes on in the world rather than the positive news. It's thanks to social media, the news articles on the internet, and the news broadcasts on TV that makes it easy for a person to access this negative news at any point in time. As of this recording, the most popular story that every news outlet is covering is the situation going on in Lebanon, where the pagers that have been planted with bombs by Israel have been detonated, causing plenty of people to end up dead and thousands of people to end up injured. It's not hard to see the tragedy behind all that. But even if you just ignore the major problems going on in the world right now, you will still see these news outlets pushing more negative stories in their websites or on a news broadcast. But why do so many people pay more attention to this? At the end of the day, when it comes to negative news, we are more triggered by something negative rather than something positive. Whether it makes us feel angry, sad, or just annoyed, we are more inclined to put all of our intention on something that is negative rather than something positive because we are more interested in the story that is covering something tragic. So obviously the news outlets are paying attention to this. They notice this, which is why they are pushing more of these negative stories, which is why they're going to broadcast something that is tragic, something that is dangerous, something that is more dramatic, because we as the consumers are going to be more inclined to pay more attention to that. Now, I don't have an issue with news outlets pushing for negative stories. I obviously am aware it's important to cover these stories because people need to be aware of the situations going on in the world. They need to know about everything, whether it's something positive or negative. They need to understand the problems and the solutions that are going on within our environment. But this does become an issue for a person if they are addicted to it. I mentioned in a previous video how a person who spends most of their time consuming negative content or just violent content in general leads them to becoming desensitized to it. Those people struggle to learn coping skills and are unable to process the tragedy that has just occurred. If a person is just addicted to negativity in general or the violence that goes on in the news, then of course they are going to gravitate towards that all the time. The reason that this is a problem is because they won't see this kind of situation as tragic, but rather they'll just play it off as something that's not a big deal and just think that it has no real effect on the world. The sad thing is they find an interest in the drama. They are consumed by all the negativity, and so they find it to be either entertaining or they find it to be something more interesting than, let's say, paying attention to positive news. And even though I think it's important to cover all news, regardless of whether it's negative or positive, if a person is just going to only focus on the negatives, their mindset is basically fucked. It's so easy to be ensnared by negative topics on the news because people just want to know what's going on. And if those people only want to focus on the negative topics on social media and not try to look for positive ones, of course, they're going to end up being desensitized by it. And they're going to end up with more pessimistic views on the world. Now, I'm not going to act like I don't have pessimistic views. In fact, I tend to only have pessimistic views of the world. But that's why I have to remind myself that just because I see horrible things happening in our world does not mean that there isn't anything good happening. But unfortunately, we live in a society where people use negativity or tragedy as a means to distract them or to get rid of their boredom. If there's a car crash in the middle of the highway, you'll oftentimes see people just pulling out their phone to take a picture or record it. Anytime there's a fight between two individuals in a club or on campus, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone just live streaming the whole thing or see someone pulling out their phone to record it or take pictures of it as well. Those people are desensitized by violence. They're desensitized by the tragedies or negativities that are going on in our world. Now, obviously, this isn't everyone. Obviously, there are people who recognize these situations and treat it normally and treat it responsibly. But I do notice people who do those things and who are acting that way because they only focus on the negativity. They see tragedy as a form of entertainment because they just spend their whole life only consuming it. But it's not okay for people to only consume the negativity. All they will have left is just a bunch of horrible thoughts going through their head, leading them to feeling worse and worse. They won't take these situations seriously, or at least how a normal person would approach it. They'll just see it as something that's normal, or something that is expected, which may lead them to having reactions that are not just harmful to themselves, but harmful to the people around them. Because they're so used to consuming this type of news, they think that the whole world is like this. They think it's something to be expected in society, and so they don't worry about the consequences that come with actually doing the things that are not considered normal or considered to be dangerous. And it is conflicting, because all the tragedy that goes on in the world does need to be made aware of. Of course, it's not up to me to decide who gets to watch what, but I am aware of how unhealthy it is for a person to only be consuming all the negative things that are going on in the world. You hear people complaining about how Twitter has just become this cesspool of negativity. And although I don't believe that, I do see where they're coming from. When you are a person who uses social media to consume global news, and the majority of global news tends to be negative topics, then of course, all of that negativity is only going to be shown on your Twitter feed. And so you believe that there is just too much negativity in the world, and that the world is cruel, and that life is unfair, and that the world is going to shit. Now, some of that might be true, but do you see how that ends up leading you to possess that type of mindset? How paying attention to all of the negative topics and all of the negative news that goes on in the world can lead you to have those types of thoughts to prevent you from having any optimism whatsoever. And so you end up looking at the world as just a giant garbage dump. And so then you just doubt that there can be anything good going on in the world. I believe it is important for the news to cover everything. Unbiasedly, of course. It's up to you to hold the responsibility of finding a balance to what kind of stories and what kind of topics you are going to consume. Just because you only see too much negative does not mean there isn't an equivalent amount of positive. And even if just through my perspective, I notice that there are more people that are interested in the negative news rather than the positive news, that's fine so long as they're not exclusively trapped to that type of news. And no matter what, the news is always going to produce negative stories. They know that people love drama. People love seeing catastrophes and tragedies and horrible things going on in the world, not because it's good for them, but because it grants them a new viewpoint of something that's going on outside of their home or outside of their environment. The benefit of that is the news granting people more awareness. They are reaching out to an audience that may or may not even know about these types of situations. And it's good that more people are going to learn about it, or at least be more aware of it. I'm sure it must be exhausting to always have to give the benefit of the doubt on certain topics or certain horrible things that happen in your environment. The negative news is definitely not helping you find solace or hope in any of these situations. But if you do take a moment to actually find the positive news, to see that there are people who do care about these situations, you might have a better outlook on life. You'll understand that people do give a shit, that people are trying very hard to help improve the lifestyles of others. And that's because they too see the horrible things going on. They witness how other people's lives or other people's situations are absolutely horrible. And so that builds up their empathy, and it makes them realize that because they have certain ideals and certain beliefs, they need to act on them and to actually prove that the world isn't just a place meant to burn and have people suffer. That's truly the benefit of the negative news and the tragic things that happen on the news. It will open the minds of people who have no idea what's going on, who are trying to get a better perspective on the world around them. People who actually care about fixing things. People who actually want the world to be a better place. And they don't want to end up like the people who get desensitized by this, who just neglect it, who just think that that's the way it should be, that's the normal expectation of the world. I don't want people to feel like that there isn't anybody who cares, that there is no hope, that all the negativity that's being covered on the news is the true image of our world. The world is definitely cruel, but there are moments where you are grateful that you get to live on it. When you're on social media or you're watching the news on TV, you need to understand that it's more for a learning experience. It's more for you to be aware. It's not just meant to be some kind of entertainment, which I never see the news to be at all. Because unless it's obvious that there is an entertainment factor being played into that story, there's no reason for you to think that that's its purpose. I just hope that people can learn from these stories, that they can feel some kind of empathy or sympathy from these news articles that are covering such tragic events. Because you can learn a lot from the news, but it's not up to them to decide for you what you believe to be right or wrong. That is your responsibility. And hopefully you will come to a reasonable conclusion. That's really all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. Thanks again for watching, and keep being awesome.